Welcome to this lecture about twin pregnancy, a simplified ultrasound approach. The goals and objective of this talk is to identify the chorionicity and amnionicity of multiple pregnancies in first and second trimesters, to review imaging features of common complications affecting monochorionic twin pregnancies, including twin-twin transfusion syndrome, TTTS, twin anemia polycythemia sequence, TAPS, and selective fetal growth restriction, SFGR. Why does chorionicity and amnionicity are so important? Monochorionic twins make only about 20% of all twin pregnancies and responsible for 30% of all cause of pregnancy-related complications. There is increased risk of stillbirth and increased rate of neonatal mortality. And if you happen to be monochorionic diamniotic twins, you have an issue. You could be TTTS, twin-twin transfusion syndrome. You could be TAPS, twin anemia polycythemia sequence. Or you could be trapped in this trap, which is twin reversed arterial perfusion syndrome. Or you could have selective fetal growth restriction, SFGR. Monoamniotic twins have all of these issues. And additionally you could have conditions such as conjoined twins, cord entanglement, and have the highest rate of intrauterine demise. There are two different kinds of twins. You can have fertilization of two ova by two different sperms resulting in dizygotic twins and two genetically different embryos called fraternal twins. In the other kind of twins, we have fertilization of single ovum by a single sperm resulting in zygote. And this zygote divides into two genetically identical embryos called monozygotic twins. Remember that there are three kinds of placentation in monozygotic twins. If the blastocyst splits before day 3, you have dichorionic diamniotic twin pregnancy. If splits between days 3 and 8, it will result in monochorionic diamniotic pregnancy. And then if it splits between days 8 and 13, you will have monochorionic monoamniotic twin pregnancy. Lastly, the conjoined twins occurs when blastocyst splits after day 13, and that is very rare. So, remember that twin pregnancies account for about 1% of all pregnancies, but is much higher in populations where in vitro fertilization is a common practice. It is best to determine chorionicity and amnionicity before 10 weeks and after 6 weeks of gestation when you start to see the yolk sacs. Dizygotic twins are more common than monozygotic twins. And all dizygotic twins are dichorionic and diamniotic. In monozygotic twins, the chorionicity or the type of placentation depend on the stage at which the blastocyst splits. And there are three kinds of placentation in monozygotic twins. How to determine chorionicity and amnionicity in the first trimester? The first rule is that number of gestational sacs or placental masses is almost always equal to chorionicity, with exception of fused dichorionic placenta. The number of yolk sacs is a good surrogate of the number of amnionicity, with exception that one yolk sac does not always equal a monoamniotic pregnancy and vice versa. On the image here, there are two thick chorionic sacs, each of them surrounding their own embryo. So this is dichorionic diamniotic twins. Here we have another case. Let's follow the rules. We have one thick chorionic sac. The sac contains two yolk sacs, so this is monochorionic diamniotic twins. On follow-up ultrasound after 3 weeks, we can see 2 embryos, with each embryo surrounded by its own amnion, so we confirm that this is monochorionic diamniotic twins. In this case, we have one thick chorionic sac, one amnion surrounding both embryos, and they are going to share this room, being monochorionic monoamniotic twins. How to determine chorionicity and amnionicity in the second trimester? In the second trimester, things start getting a little bit difficult, but we have subtle clues which can help us determine chorionicity and amnionicity. So, if you have different gender, you are sure that this is being from dizygotic fertilization. So they are dichorionic diamniotic twins. You can see that the placentas are separate. There is anterior placental mass and posterior placental mass. So these are dichorionic diamniotic twins. And this is the twin peak sign. You can see that a portion of the placenta protrudes into this thick membrane, which consists of 2 layers of chorion and 2 amnions from the 2 fertilizations. And hence this is twin peak signs of dichorionic pregnancy in the second trimester. The same gender is helpful in monochorionic twins, but even fraternal twins can have the same gender. But there are other things that can help us. Finding a single shared placenta, along with thin membrane, which meets the placenta in a perpendicular fashion creating the T sign, is helpful in identification of monochorionic diamniotic pregnancy. When there is monoamniotic twin, the hallmark finding is entangled cords. So, the twins will be the same gender, there is no intertwin membrane, you have a single placenta, and the hallmark of entangled cords. All twin pregnancy, whether monochorionic or dichorionic, are at risk for issues such as preterm labor, placenta previa or vasa previa. The placenta is the real issue why monochorionic twins are at risk. When you have monochorionic pregnancies, vascular connections can form. And as long as the placenta can maintain a balanced state, with inflow being equal to outflow. Sometimes you may have arterial anastomosis, with the twins bumping blood to each other. But if unbalanced state is created, where the flow becomes unidirectional from one twin to the other, the twins start getting into trouble. Monochorionic twins transfuse blood back and forth all the time. And it doesn't matter as long as it is balanced. And the good news is that 90% of these twins behave good and share equally and do not get into issues. But 10% will have unequal transfusion and will give rise to twin-twin transfusion syndrome, TTTS. These arteriovenous connections leads to the unbalanced shunt flow between these fetuses, where the donor twin ends up by having a hypoperfused state manifested by anemia, oliguria and oligohydramnios. And the recipient twin is polycythemic and demonstrates signs of plethora, such as polyuria, polyhydramnios and circulatory overload. Interesting to note that donor twins often have marginal or velamentous placental cord insertion. Twin-twin transfusion syndrome, TTTS, is one of the most serious complications of the anomalous vascular connections in the shared monochorionic placenta. It affects 10 to 15% of monochorionic pregnancies. The diagnosis of TTTS is usually made in the second trimester, with the hallmark observation being oligohydramnios in one sac and polyhydramnios in the other sac. In the first trimester, reversal of the A wave in ductus venosus waveform may indicate an increased risk for development of twin-twin transfusion syndrome. Once diagnosis is established, staging is done on the basis of imaging findings into 5 stages. Stage 1. Oligohydramnios polyhydramnios appearance. Let's look at this case. We can see these are monochorionic diamniotic twins with a single shared placenta. There is oligohydramnios of the donor twin and polyhydramnios of the recipient twin. But the good news is that bladder is present in both fetuses. And this is going to be stage 1 twin-twin transfusion syndrome, also called Oli-Poly appearance. So, in stage 1, oligohydramnios affects the donor twin with a maximum vertical pocket measuring less than 2 centimeters. And polyhydramnios affects the recipient twin with a maximum vertical pocket measuring greater than 8 centimeters. And the donor twin bladder is present. The diagnosis of TTTS is much difficult to make in monochorionic monoamniotic twins, as there is only one amniotic space, and polyhydramnios is the usual manifestation in these patients. Stage 2. When you start going beyond stage 1, the recipient twin keeps on getting more polyhydramnios, and the donor twin has a worse oligohydramnios. So, in addition to the Oli-Poly appearance, the donor bladder is absent in stage 2. Usually, this is associated with anhydramnios, which creates the stuck twin appearance. With no substantial amniotic fluid remaining in the sac, the donor twin is shrink-wrapped in the membranes and becomes opposed to the uterine wall. This is called stuck twin appearance. Stage 3. This more polyhydramnios puts a strain on the fetal recipient heart, and at this time you will get Doppler abnormalities. So, in stage 3, Doppler abnormalities become evident, including absent diastolic flow in the umbilical artery, most commonly in the donor twin. Reversed flow in the ductus venosus and umbilical vein notching can be also depicted. For stage 3, now we are expecting addition Doppler abnormalities. And as shown in this case, I am looking for the umbilical artery and ductus venosus of the donor. And as noticed, there is absent end diastolic flow in the umbilical artery and reversed a wave in ductus venosus waveform. And with this Doppler abnormality, we have pumped up to stage 3. Stage 4. For stage 4, you will end up getting heart failure in the recipient twin, and you will also get signs of hydrox, which includes body wall edema, pleural effusion, pericardial effusion, and ascites. Here we see the recipient twin showing ascites and scalp edema. Stage 5. For stage 5, unfortunately, you will get twin demise, which could involve one or the two fetuses. Why do we care so much about these stages? One important thing to remember is that if you have stage 1, you have 50% or more chance of getting better. But once they have reached the stage where the donor does not have a demonstrable bladder anymore, you have 80 to 90% chance of losing one or both fetuses. The treatment options for TTTS including reduction amniocentesis. In this procedure, we do draining the amniotic fluid from around the recipient twin and laser ablation of the placental anastomotic vessels in more advanced stages, stage 2 and higher. Let's look at twin anemia polycythemia sequence, TAPS. One important thing that needs to be for twin anemia polycythemia sequence for us to make the diagnosis is that the amniotic fluid should be absolutely normal. But if the fluid is not normal, you are in the TTTS category, not TAPS category. When you are evaluating for twin anemia polycythemia sequence, you are looking for MCA Doppler as a surrogate of the velocity of blood flow with anemic twins, anemic blood flow and much faster. Here you can see in these two fetuses, the amniotic fluid is normal, but they will start discordance in the velocity. And we calculate multiple of median, and one twin is anemic and the other is cythemic. And this is in keeping with twin anemia polycythemia sequence. For anemic twin, multiple of median will be more than 1.5. And for polycythemic twin, multiple of median will be less than 1. Selective fetal growth restriction and unequal placental sharing. Twins may not quite share very well. In fact, when this sharing needs to happen for the placenta in utero, it is truly the survival for fetuses. Here is an example of twin, which have central cord insertion, and the other one has a marginal cord insertion. Let's draw this imaginary line, which definite the imaginary quitter in the placenta for this pregnancy. Now the kid which get 2/3 of the placenta is happy and continues to grow, where the other kid that has marginal cord insertion has growth trouble, as well as the other fetus in utero. And that leads to a selective fetal growth restriction. You can already see there is visual discrepancy in the size of these fetuses, and you can calculate weight discordance using the larger twin as reference. If you have more than 25% weight discordance, or the smaller fetus is less than 10 percentile, that constitutes unequal placental sharing. Once the diagnosis of selective fetal growth restriction is established in monochorionic twins, umbilical artery Doppler findings in the smaller twin are used for further classification. In type 1, there is normal end-diastolic flow in the umbilical artery. In type 2, the end-diastolic flow is absent or reversed. And in type 3, the end-diastolic flow is intermittently absent or reversed. And this flow is also called cyclical flow. So, when you have twins, it is very important to identify and establish the twin identity at the very instance you see them. Then establish placental cord insertion, whether central versus marginal or velamentous. Identify discordant anomalies or growth. Maintain twin identity for all future follow-ups. There is increased risk of congenital cardiac anomalies, so there is a role of fetal echocardiography. In initial scan, you have to confirm that twins are viable. After that, you have to do ultrasound every 2 weeks, starting at 16 weeks to delivery, to look for twin-twin transfusion syndrome. Check for the bladder and amniotic fluid, and do multivessel Doppler. If a twin anemia polycythemia sequence is suspected, you have to be sure that the amniotic fluid is normal. Though multivessel Doppler focusing on middle cerebral arteries peak systolic velocities and calculate multiple of median. If you definitely search for unequal placental sharing, check fetal weight and calculate weight discordance. Take-home messages. All twin pregnancies have a higher risk of preterm labor, premature rupture of membranes, and placenta previa. Chorionicity determines the prognosis of multiple gestations. Cord entanglement is a hallmark finding for monoamniotic twins, and conjoined twins can only happen in monoamniotic pregnancy. Diagnosis of twin-twin transfusion syndrome is usually made in the second trimester, with the hallmark finding is olipoly appearance. Amniotic fluid discrepancy is not a feature of twin anemia polycythemia sequence. Thank you for your attention.